I'm going to ask you what I think is a fairly simple question. What is your impression of Yair Rodriguez now compared to your impression of him 3-4 years ago?
Well, I can sum that up quite clearly and cleanly, Joe. The stink of that Frankie Edgar beatdown that Yair took early in his UFC career. We have to go back to 2017 for that one. It was a second round KO after hellacious ground and pound. Very comfortable win for Frankie Edgar. Dumped him on his butt and stood up, postured up, and just wailed on young Yair.
Yeah.
He took the kind of beating you don't expect young guys to come back from. That is one of those, you're going to wince if you Google that fight, because there was a nasty eye closure on Rodriguez, and it was a merciful stoppage. That's normally where you draw the line under these young flashy guys. They get a bit flashy after that, Joe, when they've taken that kind of beating, when they've got that vulnerability in their game. But here we are, 6 years later, Yair Rodriguez stands atop the pack of contenders, kind of, with the exclusion of Max Holloway, who we have to conveniently dismiss for this fight. And yeah, some might argue he deserves to be that. I feel like you're going to be one of them, Joe. How do you see Yair Rodriguez now?
I find it quite weird now, because we look at Yair, even in his loss to Max Holloway, I think he gained a lot of credit in that. He had the weird win over Brian Ortega, and then he had the ass kicking that he handed out to Josh Emmett. Like, even when Emmett took him down, it was like Yair was beating him up off his back. Michael Bisping like elbows off his back. Do you know what I mean? Where just long range elbows that he was landing, full extension. Doesn't matter what he's landing on, he's landing. And then remember this: Yair was cut from the UFC a couple of years ago. Like, he was cut because he was just messing them around. They felt like, or he wasn't taking fights, he wasn't fit, he wasn't ready. Maybe he'd been this sort of letdown because they wanted him to be this Mexican superstar. So they cut him.
It was in the midst of the Jeremy Stevens debacle. Now, Joe, that was just 4 short years ago that he had that strange period with Jeremy Stevens.
The 2 matchups with him.
Yeah, now, for me, that's not in the distant past. Indeed, it's only 3 fights ago. And in that time, he's also, pretty comfortably be beaten by Max Holloway. Don't mention it too loudly, though. I don't know, Joe. I don't know. I want to believe he's turned a corner, but it's hard for me to ignore what Volkanovski's done in that same period, and he's really, Joe.
Yeah.
We have to mention his name. He is Alexander the Great. He is the man that I'm here to see.
Yeah.
He is. I'm a huge fan. I can't deny him his airtime any longer, because he really is on another peak to Yair. Yair is in the mere foothills, tripping over. Volkanovski's climbed the mountain, Joe. He is Mount Olympus in the featherweight division. Yeah,
pound for pound, number 1 fighter in the world for me. I'm not having John Jones at number 1. 3 years off in a shit performance against Cyril Gane. I'm not having it. Volkanovski has painted many a masterpiece in the last few years. Most notably, I think the 3rd one against Holloway. And then his, frankly, dismantling of Brian Ortega, despite Ortega's 2 incredible submission attacks in there. That was, at points, actually, Volk was worse than what Holloway did to Ortega, and Ortega took a historic beating off of him. And almost in a way, Volkanovski took mercy on him in the end by letting him get to the end of that fight. I mean, I think Volkanovski is, in a way, the most exciting fighter in the UFC, because I don't think he's going to add anything more to his game. I just don't know where the resistance comes. Does that make sense? I really don't think it's at 145, and I'm really thinking that he may not fight again at 145 after this fight. I'm thinking that he is win, lose, or draw will just move up. I think there's more money fights for him up there.
Whoa. Let me check you right there, Joe. Win, or lose, or draw? Volkanovski, I'm sorry, he does not have that mindset. If Yair surprised him, he could not let that one go. He could not let that go, Joe.
Yeah, you're right. I walked that back.
In fact,
yeah.
he wouldn't beat him once, Joe. He'd beat him twice. He'd be waiting in the parking lot outside after the event, Joe. This man is a competitor.
Yeah.
And that is why we see him at 155 eventually returning there. He revelled in his narrow defeat to Makhachev. Fantastic fight, one that we can discuss time and again, and already, of course, we have put significant airtime into that one. Close fight, no matter which way you scored it in the end. And Volkanovski, he wants it back. It keeps him awake at night, Joe. He's hungry for it. He wants to show that evolution. He truly wants to be the best of all time. Now, he's starting to get into a position where he can start to enter that discussion.
Yes.
Does a win over Yair Rodriguez further his cause? I think we know it doesn't. It does nothing for him.
No, I think it does.
Legacy.
I think it does.
Oh, okay.
I think it does. I think it's a strengthening of the body of work. Because if you look at when I think of great fighters and their campaigns, it's who they've beat and what those opponents have offered them. You know what I mean? Right. And it's the variety of opponents of he beat this guy. He beat Max Holloway at boxing, essentially. He beat Max Holloway at what Max is best at. Do you know what I mean? He managed to get through Ortega's submission attack.
He outslugged Mendes.
He outslugged Mendes. Him. I know, and he was rocked by Mendes as well. And he was just like, I'm not having that, pal. I'm getting that back.
Uppercut for uppercut, Joe.
And he
brawl.
Shut Jose Aldo down. I mean, I think Aldo was kind of not that bothered about that fight anyway, but still, regardless, completely bamboozled him. And I think we'll probably see something similar to that in this fight. I'm just going to throw this out there quickly before I go into their respective game plans here. There's one slight weakness that I picked up on with Volkanovski, and that is to high kicks. Okay? And what he does is, he quite often will lean into them. He leans into a lot of these high kicks. Sometimes arm up, so he's able to block it, and then he can start working in from there. But sometimes these high kicks come at a different points where he's in the middle of something and the high kick comes up and he leans into it kind of naked, basically. And we know what Rodriguez's great skill is, which is the kicking game. Even when he gets cramped, he's still throwing it. But against Josh Emmett, where Josh Emmett did push into him, showed a sort of game plan that you need to do against him, Emmett doesn't have the physicality or the cardio to put the pace on that Volkanovski does. And I expect that Volkanovski's game plan will be just to cramp him as much as he can, make it a clinch fight, dirty boxing, the Yoel Romero arm movements there, up against the cage, dragging him down. I'm expecting wrestling as well. I'm expecting attacks to the back, and I'm not expecting any sub-attacks from there, but I'm expecting ground and pound, mostly from the grappling exchanges from Volkanovski. For Yair, I'm expecting long-range kicking game, lateral movement, and actually, I think Yair should slow the fight down as soon as possible. Make it as slow as possible so that he can keep pace with Volkanovski for as long as possible. I do think Volkanovski would probably take over in the later rounds if it gets that far, regardless, though, of what Rodriguez does.
I love that analysis, and I think a lot of it is valid, but one question came to mind immediately there. Sounds nice to have a nice slow fight, shot for shot, against Alex the Great Volkanovski. I'm not sure how he achieves that. How does Yair slow this fight down? How does he bring it to a pace that's more sustainable for him?
You either go for something like kicks to the body, okay, which will be... He'll have that leg reach advantage over him, so he could throw kicks to the body. I presume, though, that Alex would be prepared for that, be aiming for some court kicks. Again, the problem with that, though, is that you would then set yourself up for a high kick from there. And also, you've got to, shut off his wheels, essentially. So you've got to go for low kicks as well. I also think a sort of jab, lateral movement, kick combination could be a good thing to do. And also what really impressed me in the Emmett fight was that he was throwing these wild kicks, foot would land, and immediately a jab or a straight would be right behind it. Do you know what I mean? I remember there was one where he threw a right lead kick, foot came down, and immediately left hand straight behind it, catching Emmett. Didn't knock him down, didn't cut him or anything, but it was constantly rhythm sort of breaks that he was getting into with Emmett. If Rodriguez goes out there and fights at that pace immediately, I think that's a dangerous thing to do against Volkanovski, because the chances of getting him out of there, I think Volkanovski now is very, very difficult. So I think that's what he has to do. I'm kind of thinking remember when Whittaker fought Adesanya the second time, where like the pace got really slowed down, and people made a case for Whittaker winning that fight. Not for me personally. I'm thinking Rodriguez would have to do something like that. Does he have the discipline to do it? I don't know.
Okay, Joe. Well, I believe he does. I do believe he does, but I don't know if he has the skill.
Right.
By that I mean, like, I think he's a very well drilled fighter, despite his penchant for flair.
Yeah.
I think he does bring back kind of, how do I express this? He trains in a certain mold. And he's able to fight within that mold, then express himself.
Yeah.
However, I just don't think Volkanovski will allow that to happen. I don't think that you can win the respect of Volkanovski simply by mixing up the tempo, simply by like changing the order of your strike, shall we say, to try to reduce that flow, choosing when you come in, etc. Because Volkanovski's always in and out of that space himself whilst on the gas throughout the fight. It does also invite that question that if Volkanovski is stepping in through the kicking range of Yair, right, and Yair doesn't have that space to operate in, even though he does have incredibly impressive kicks, that invites so many more facets to the fight which favour Volkanovski. In that kind of telephone box, when he's inside the kicking range of Yair, you've got to favour Volkanovski in those positions. You can see him potentially wrapping up clinches, going to Muay Thai grips, and of course it does open up the possibility of some trips for Volkanovski.
Yeah.
I don't think that Yair would have the same success that he did against Emmett were that to happen. I favour Volkanovski on the mat.
I would also favour that. I think also particularly if my prediction's correct, that Volkanovski would be looking for the back as well. Like I think that's what he'd be going for, and also with the Muay Thai clinches as well up against the cage, just tiring Rodriguez's arms out. That would be what I predict his game plan would be. I think also what you're saying as well with if he comes through the kicking range is that I wonder if Yair will then introduce knees into it from there. I mean, he must be thinking that. He must be thinking that Volkanovski's going to press. He's in range for knees. He's in range. The height helps him for that. Yeah. Surely he must be. It's just that Volkanovski's probably aware of that as well, and that he has probably something lined up for him.
This is the scary thing. Well, I think that invites takedowns, Joe. I think that's what it does. If Yair works, let's say, Yair throws something special. You're not going to come out and tell me Yair catches Volkanovski with a flying knee as Volkanovski kind of ducks inside that range of the kick. Oh, it's actually a knee coming up the middle, and Volkanovski doesn't see it coming. No, I just feel like that, unfortunately, is what Yair is reduced to. That kind of freak chance. The
zombie knockout.
Wow, Joe.
Well, remember that fight as well.
Yeah,
remember that fight?
Of course. He was. We know he was 5 seconds from losing over 25 minutes.
Yeah, he got whooped. He got whooped by a subprime Korean zombie. And I know that Yair's not the same fighter anymore. He's an older, more experienced guy, but it was still an ass kicking he took with one of the most amazing knockout finishes you've ever seen.
Oh.
And then I go back to the Max fight where, he's giving Max some problems on the feet, and then Max just wrestled him. Like, you don't think Volk's going to think of that? How do I get to a single leg from there? Do I get the trip? Yeah. Do I tree top him? He's thinking all these things. And then also with Craig Jones as his jiu-jitsu coach, now the number 1 grappler in the world after his win over Felipe Pena. I'm sorry, man. I almost think in a way Yair would hope to, at points, if they get into grappling, to be able to just go to his back. Would Yair just pull guard so he can throw elbows? Is that something that could happen? Throw a triangle up? Something like that? He's got the limbs for it.
Well, we know now with the evolution of the sport, you're at desperation stakes. If that's what you have to resort to, it can't be argued that is an inferior position. All right, the Tony Ferguson era, Joe, it's finished.
Yeah,
it's over. All right, elbows off the back, they were all always a bit unorthodox, always something surprising, some weapon that someone might impress you with, surprise you that they were able to produce that kind of damage and obviously catch off an opponent who was relying on top pressure alone to win them rounds. But we have surpassed that. Yeah. And if that is what Yair is reduced to, that's a sorry state indeed. I think what you can see here, Joe, is my prediction emerging.
Yeah. What are you going for?
Volkanovski wins this fight by TKO.
Ooh.
TKO. He withers him. He withers him over time, and Yair wastes away in front of the fans. Mexico mourns. No more champs this fight week.
Wow, hold on. Have you just given away your prediction? Oh, my word.
I've given a double, Joe.
Oh, my Lord.
I'm saying the number of Mexican champs this week, it doesn't increase.
Okay, all right, okay. That's probably fair. Yeah, I've gone for Volkanovski as well.
Can you pull up the odds on that, please? Who's Joe Rogan's assistant? Can you pull up the odds on no more the level of Mexican champions? Does it go up or go down? I want that bet.
You want that bet?
It doesn't increase. It doesn't increase.
Okay, yeah. It maintains or reduces. Yeah.
Give me your prediction.
Okay, so it's the same for me. Like Volkanovski by 4th, 5th round stoppage. I'm expecting just Yair to be a bloody mess. I'm expecting Frankie Edgar, but on all the PEDs. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking all the EPO. I'm just thinking Volkanovski, he's standing at his corner, he's waiting to come out, and Yair's a beaten man. And then it's just, maybe if I go to my back, I can throw an elbow, and then just, Volk gets over him, pounds him into the mat. Late finish for me. I think Yair's a tough dude, but I think Volk's pace and game planning will be too much for him.